everybody. Welcome to office hours. Just give everybody a couple minutes to come in here. Sorry, I was 2 minutes late. Just was one of those days. All right. Well, happy May. We got past May 1st, which is a big, it's a big day. One of the few deadlines that across the board is pretty consistent. So that's the day. If you have a senior, you got to have your deposit check in. So that was yesterday. So go ahead and put in the chat. I'm just curious what year everybody is. What's your year? Okay, so there's Glenda. She's got a 2022. We got a junior, senior. Okay, well, we at least got, okay, so we got sophomore. So we have a couple seniors. So woohoo, you made it. I will say for seniors, not that this is the place you're at in the process, but do realize that schools are still accepting applications. And there's actually a list that NACAC, the National Association of College Admission Counseling, I think is what it stands for. I always forget. I'll post it here in the chat. They put out a list of schools that are still accepting applications. I'm not saying that that's something you'll take advantage of, but I just want everybody to know as far as there are plenty of schools right now that are accepting applications still. And you can still reach out to the school that your child committed to and appeal. I'm not, once you say yes, it's a slightly different scenario, but if your child starts looking around and finds something and gets in and gets a nicer package, just realize you can always reach back out to the schools. It's not the end of the whole process right now. Of course, it's the best to reach out before you've said yes, and you kind of have the most leverage, but colleges know that you can change your mind and decide to go to a different school in June, and that's not really what they want, right? So just keep that in mind. You're not in a position where you can't change. And if some of your kids are on a wait list, your child might end up getting off the wait list, and then you'd make a change anyways, potentially, right? So just keep that in mind. That's just one thing that I wanted to share about this time of year. And I did put that in the chat, and that's updated constantly. So if that's something of interest, you can bookmark it and go back and forth. So I don't really, this time of year, I don't have a big thing prepared to chat about. I really just wanted to show up here, see what kind of questions you guys have at this step in the process. That was the main thing that I wanted to share, that, you should have your deposit check in by now to hold your spot. And I guess, what comes after this, and if the senior parents here have already done it, what comes next is setting up a housing. Now there's more deposits. There's a housing deposit, right? And then you start to pick roommates and dorms and your housing situation. And again, every school is different how they do that. I remember with my two, some of the schools, I know my kids filled out something, or there was some Facebook group, or there was something like that. And so they ended up not picking their roommates, but basically filling out something that was honest about who they were. Like, for example, my daughter, I'm sure she would love that I'm sharing this in public, but she's not the neatest person. So, they ask questions like, do you like to stay up late? Do you have a messy room? Or are you a neatnik? And I told her, be honest, which she did. So she got a great roommate and they got along, but it's a little bit different maybe than when you were a kid. It's not, and some of these kids, and I counsel my kids not to do this, but that was just my take on it. You can actually try and pick a roommate, or depending on the school, your child might know kids, right, that are going to be going in the fall as well. So that's kind of, it's kind of a personal choice if you want to pick a roommate ahead of time, or if you want to just leave it up to chance. I kind of told my kids, be honest about who you are, and then just leave it up to chance. And it worked out great for both of them. So, but that's kind of the next step. And if you submitted your check a while ago, you would have already started that process. But I would tell your kids, because I know email for a lot of kids is kind of like writing on a stone tablet. It's archaic, but they really need to keep up on the email, that they probably have an email from the school. So it's cjones@syracuse.edu or whatever. Really pay attention to that and forward emails to you about anything that seems important, because things like signing, that if your kids have taken out or are planning on taking out direct student loans, they're going to have to go through online loan counseling and then e-sign a promissory note. The school could just be communicating. Maybe they're texting more, I don't know. But if they communicate via email, it's important that your kids don't miss any of that, just like not pay attention to email. So just tell them that and make sure that they're forwarding stuff to you. I remember my kids, like there were a few tests they had to take, like basic English competency and math, just to see where they would start in English based on this test they took. And then sometimes for foreign languages, they have that for placement. So just tell your kids to be definitely checking whatever email the college of choice is using to communicate, and make sure they're paying attention and responding. Basically, that's important. There was something else that popped in my head when I was talking, but oh yeah, there's one other thing that, in case I forget as we move on here, we are doing a webinar, and you'll get email invites, but since I've got you guys, I'm going to share this in the chat as well. We are doing, I'm going to put the Zoom registration, so that's in there as well. We are doing, and let me just paste it so you can see exactly what we're covering, and I'll share it on, let me just share this now. On May 12th at, what time is it at? So 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, and all the other zones in there, 5 and 4. Or 5 and 6, how to borrow for college correctly and why everyone should, or I think why everyone should consider doing it. But we are going to cover all this stuff. It's a really, really, I wouldn't say dense, because that sounds negative, but it's information packed webinar. We go through all the different ways to pay for college, and we talk about the different loan types and the pros and cons of each type, and what resources to use and when. And there's just a lot of great content in there. So I recommend, this is definitely very timely for kids, for parents that have seniors. But I would also, if you're one of these parents that likes to know what's coming up and you want to start thinking about it, I would recommend jumping on there. If you have a junior, just so you understand, because as you're looking at affordability, if there are funding gaps, I think it's really beneficial to you. You're looking at a potential loan payments, and we've got that modeled in MyCap with an assumed interest rate, to even understand the different types of loans and how much you can get in different ones, I think is really helpful for junior parents as well. And, to me, as you've probably heard me say, the more information you have as a parent, the more educated you are about all this, that you're just going to be in a more of a position of power when you're speaking with the colleges on visits and asking questions at financial aid and admissions. Just the more you know, the better, because then you can cut through some of the marketing and really get down to brass tacks when you're visiting or you're asking them questions on the phone. So those are my announcements, the NACX site, the webinar that's coming up. What questions do you guys have? This is really your forum to ask me any and all questions. And I can pull up my cap and show you a few things too about some resources we have in there for loans, since that's what we're coming up to for seniors. But I don't see any questions in the Q&A at this point. So don't be shy. That's what you're here for. I will, in the meantime, while you're coming up with all your questions, let me just pull up. I'm going to pull up my cap here and just show you, since we're talking about loans here. So here's the MyCap dashboard, right? I always forget where it is. Oh, hold on, that's not the dashboard. Okay. I think it's on the affordability page. No, it's not. Let's see if it's on the dashboard page. I thought I just looked for it. Yep, here it is. Okay, so down at the bottom, so I'm on the main page. When you log in, you end up on your dashboard. If you scroll to the bottom, that's, oops, flip back up. Here, there's a link that goes directly over to the federal student loan page, and it opens in a separate tab, so you can easily toggle back and forth. And there's another one that comes over to the parent loan, Parent Plus loan, which, you know, I'm happy to chat about if people have questions about it. Those are the two federal loans that are given out. So there's information there. And then we also recently updated this, because it used to be a link for Sally Mae and another provider, but now we've got some good information. Compare private student loan rates, which is another, okay, I don't know how you get it. Let me just put in a school here, so that it'll move forward. So this gives you the opportunity to look at student loan providers. So best private student loans for Cornell College for 2022. So it's got a ranking, and then these rates are all going to be dependent on your credit score and your background, right? Whereas the federal rates, the federal direct student loan is 3.734. That's for everybody. That's for every student, because it's just all you need to do is submit the FAFSA and you're eligible for that. So this is the other piece that comes up over here. These are different. These you're applying for a loan, and they're looking at if you're a good credit risk or not, right? So these rates, if they put a range, it would be quite a wide range of, this is the lowest interest rate, you know, it could be like, I'm making these up, a 5% up to 15% kind of thing. It could be pretty varied. So, but these resources are right on the desktop. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, on your MyCap account. So let's pop in here, because I see, yeah, put your questions in Q&A. One person put it in the chat, but that's okay. I will read it. Mine was offered around 4K this year and 2K the other year in grants, but only 446 in subsidized loan and 5K in direct unsubsidized loan and no work study. How can I ask for work study and direct subsidized loans? So good question. Basically, the subsidized loans and work study are federal need-based aid. So you have to have need for them to be able to offer you that. So when I see what you said about 446 of direct subsidized loan and another 5,000 of unsubsidized, what that tells me is you had $446 in their mind of need-based aid. So under the federal mandate, they're allowed to give you $446 of a subsidized direct student loan. The rest has to be unsubsidized if you don't have need. And the difference between those two is that the subsidized direct loan, the interest is paid by the government until 6 months after the student graduates, as long as the student stays in school, for the 4 years, right? You can't drop out of school or go and only be taking, one class or something. So that's based on your question, even though I only have 24 in checking and savings and another child in college with tuition also. This really, without looking deeper into your situation, on your MyCap, you should see a federal EFC right up here. In my example, it's 52,000. So what you're going to want to do is look at the cost of the school you're looking at, subtract whatever your EFC is. So let's just say the school costs 60,000 and your EFC is 30,000. That means you have need of 30,000 in the college's eyes. And if they give, I'm just using this as an example, say they gave your child a $25,000 merit scholarship. So that means not based on need, but because of grades and test scores. So if you have 30,000 of need and the college gives 25, well, let me change that. The college gives 28,000 of merit aid. So if you have 30,000 of need, the college gives you 28 or your child 28 of merit, you've got 2,000 left over of need. That's all they could give you in a subsidized student loan. Okay. They can give the rest in unsubsidized to max it out at 5,500 for freshman year. So based on what you're sharing here, that's what this means, that you have, like I said, you have $446 of need. And it's not just based on what you have in checking and savings. A much bigger driver is your income. So they ask for your earnings. If you're married, the earnings for both people in the household. And they also ask for your adjusted gross income. And then they also asked about if you were saving pre-tax for retirement, like in a 401k, and if that was not mandated by your employer, it was your choice to save. That's considered income. And obviously your adjusted gross income is considered income. So income is a much bigger driver than non-retirement assets. So just keep that in mind. Income is assessed after allowances 22 to 47% versus assets are up to 5.64%. And it's only non-retirement assets. But you said what you have in checking and savings. If you have any money in a stock portfolio or CDs or stock options, anything else that's non-retirement, then all of that after an allowance is assessed at 5.64%. So just keep all that in mind. It's not just what's in your checking and savings account. So hopefully that helps. If it doesn't, and you have some more questions around that, I would recommend in your situation because maybe you made an error on the FAFSA. And so they're thinking your need is lower than it should be. I mean, I'm just guessing here because I don't know your situation, right? Or it might be a situation where you can appeal. They can't give you work study if they feel like they've met your need, because that's need-based aid, because the government is paying half of the hourly wage that your child makes. So you can't, like at the end of your question, how can I ask for work study and direct subsidized loan? Unless you can point out that there was an error made or something and you actually have more need. If you do have more need, then you can actually absolutely ask for more of a subsidized loan. So I would recommend that you think about booking an hour with one of our experts, because then they can pull up your account with you and look at everything, and maybe it's right and that just is what it is. I can't guarantee that when you meet you'll be able to find something, but that's the place to really dig in. Okay, so that's what I would recommend there. And you can see up here, if you're in MyCap and say if you're in the free version, if you're in freemium, then you'll have a button up here that says upgrade. And when you click on that to sign up for a meeting, you would hit the valedictorian button. And then you can pay and you can pick. We've added a lot of great experts. So you can pick first available, or you can pick the drop down and see what I'm on there, but I'm booked out several weeks. So we have really great advisors that can help you. So don't feel like you have to talk to me. I mean, I'd love to meet with you, but if time is of the essence, you don't have to meet with me. So you might want to think about doing that. Okay. Yeah. All right. So one more popped in the chat. Guys, put your questions. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff here. Okay. Do you have any overall about the admissions cycle? Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff in here that I didn't see. So do you have any overall reflections, impressions about the admission cycle? What I found, and again, I'm not a counselor, so I'm not working with the students on the academic and personal fit side, but I do see a lot of award letters and talk to a lot of parents, and I also talk to a lot of independent counselors. And this year seems to be, it's a crazy world we live in admissions and financial aid sometimes, but this year it seems to be even crazier than it's been in the past. Really kind of crazy stuff. Like, let me give you a couple examples. I'm out in the Seattle area, and I had a counselor share with me that had a student that had a 4.55 and a 35 ACT. So almost perfect ACT, and, over an A, weighted GPA, applied to the University of Washington, state school, Washington kid, for computer science. And I will say, if you're not from this part of the world, computer science is extremely competitive. So it's not a shoe-in for any student, but the student did not get into computer science, but then didn't even get into the University of Washington in general, and got into Harvard. So, that's a bit crazy. And then the UC schools, the University of California schools, I'd heard that a student did not get into UC Santa Cruz, which is not as hard to get into as Berkeley, right? That most of you have heard of. And the student got into Berkeley and not UC Santa Cruz. So my take on these, and this is just my gut, is that these colleges, they're not just looking at kids anymore and saying, are you qualified? They're looking at students, and then they're deciding, do we think that this, hold on 1 second, guys. I'm just going to close my door. Okay, sorry about that. There's just some noise. Somebody's coming in the office, so I just didn't want to have too much noise. They're looking at students and saying, okay, obviously, if a student got into Harvard, that student, one would surmise, should be able to get into a state public school, especially it's their state, right? So it's easier for in-state kids. All public colleges usually accept more of the in-state kids than out-of-state, right? But I think what some of these schools are doing is they're really looking at, like, that student at University of Washington. I think what UW was doing, and again, this is just my gut, is that they were saying, you know what, we're not going to accept her into computer science, so we don't think she's going to come. So we'd rather give that seat to somebody else. So they just flat out rejected her. UC Santa Cruz could be the same thing. It could have been, wow, I think this student, and I'm just guessing, I don't know anything about that student as far as grades and test scores, but UC Santa Cruz could have thought, you know what, we only have so many spots and we don't think that student's going to come. They're overqualified, whatever. And so we're just going to reject them. And, Berkeley felt like that was a good fit. So what I would say is, what you want to do, if there's people with juniors and sophomores, just really, really find schools that are affordable, which you're going to do. You're in our community. But with the academic and personal fit, find schools that fit all and really cast a wide net, right? So it's really crazy with admissions. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And if the dean of some college said, or the provost of the university said, hey, we need to beef up our our math score for, women of color. So we're going to focus on that, the math SAT score and the ACT or whatever. And so they have a focus a given year. We're never going to know that. You're not going to know that as a consumer. I'm not going to know that unless I know somebody at that college and they decide to tell me, right? So I would just say cast a wide net. This is what I did with my two. This wasn't yesterday, right? They graduated college in 2016. So they've been out for a little while, but we really, you hear the safety, mid, and stretch schools, right? Just cast a net of good schools that are a good fit for your child. Some might be harder to get into than others, of course, and just see where the chips fall, because that's what I've heard as far as this admission cycle, that there's just been some crazy rejections and acceptances that counselors thought, really, that kid got in and that kid didn't. So just realize they don't spend a lot of time on applications either. And I know that's probably heartbreaking to hear when you see how hard your kids work on the applications, and especially the CSS profile, where it can have all these, you can have supplement, not the CSS profile, but the schools, a lot of the schools that require the CSS profile, if they're through the Common App, they could have, I remember Wake Forest, when my son applied, had 7 supplemental essays. And those really short ones, I think, are even harder because you have to be succinct. And these kids do all this work, and the application might be looked at for 10 minutes or less, right? So this is the kind of information that you can also share with your kids, as much as you feel you know your kids and what will land and what won't discourage them or bum them out. But just let them know that there is a lot of subjectivity here. And if they don't get into their favorite school, it's okay, right? They're going to end up where they belong and where they can thrive. I also had a counselor say to me a couple months ago, and I might have already said this on office hours, so if you've already heard it, I apologize, but she referred to what we call stretch schools, these highly selective Harvards of the world. She just said, I call them wild cards. They're just wild cards, right? And so you don't want to have a list of wild cards. There was an article in Wall Street Journal that was about a girl, super kid, as I like to call them. She didn't get into any of the Ivies. And she was like, wow, I thought I had a chance to get into one. I had kids this year have started businesses, have businesses making 100K of revenue, and they didn't get into any of the Ivies, right? So I personally think that that's just meant to be, and that student's going to go somewhere else and really do well and thrive, and it's all good, right? But that's probably a long-winded answer to your question, Naomi, but those are the reflections I've heard from counselors and that I've personally seen. I have seen schools step up on appeals, but appeals are the same thing as getting admitted. Like it's all about the bottom line with them and appealing correctly and making an ask that's reasonable. And, I've seen CSS profiles where there's an error by the parent, and then I just had one where I worked with a family and they made a mistake. They basically said that there was 50K coming from a scholarship that didn't exist. So that needed to be fixed, because the college thinks right away you have $50,000, but also they didn't put that they had an outside property. I think they just didn't know because it wasn't in the country. And so I backed into it, and I figured out, they were assuming that property was worth like $1 million, right? So then no need-based aid. And I counseled them on how to reach out to the schools and get to the bottom of it. And then a huge amount of need-based aid rolled in. They were giving a little bit of need-based aid, some of the schools, but then it turned into another 28 or 21,000 a year of need-based aid. So that's what I'm saying, Glenda. There might be something there. I'm not, that's an example of something that I just got an email from a parent last night. I'm not saying that's your situation. That's obviously an extreme situation, and there were some errors. But if you don't think that's aligning and you don't think that's right, then you should get some help, and just click on the book expert consultation or upgrade, and then click on the valedictorian option. Somebody put in here, just out of curiosity, if one is divorced and paying child support, how is that taken into consideration? So whoever, as far as submitting like the FAFSA, Only the custodial parent submits the FAFSA, and the custodial parent is where the child spent the most time on a year look back from when you're hitting submit on the form. So if you did it last, if you have a senior and you did it last November, it would have been that look back. If you have a junior, forms are going to go live October 1, and it's really going to be that look back period. So one, that's a planning opportunity, right? Because if you're 50-50 and one parent has less income and less assets, and and it works in your family dynamic. So okay, what if you have joint custody? That's great. Joint custody is perfect. Then wherever your child, if there is a parent where it's better from a purely financial aid standpoint of lowering the EFC for one parent to be the custodial parent, just have your child spend a little bit more time on a year look back. If it's joint and it's been 50-50, that's easy to do. Just have them spend a few extra days with you or your ex, and then you're totally being honest, you're following the rules, and then have that parent submit the FAFSA with the student. So it's the custodial parent's income and assets, and then your child's income and assets. I will say that rule, just so you know, that definition of custodial parent is in force for this coming school year, 22-23 and 23-24. In 24-25, it's going to change. So if you have a junior, just realize this will be in place for year 1, but then it's going to change, and the definition of custodial parent will be the parent that provides the most financial support. And if that's even, then it will be the parent that makes more money. And you did, yeah. Oh boy is right. And you know what? We're trying to make enough noise to get rid of that rule, because there were a lot of changes made in the FAFSA Simplification Act that were understandable. That was not one of them. So if you go to, actually, I'll show you guys right now. If you go to, and I'll post it, if you go to change.org. Oops, I got to type change right, or else it won't work. You go to change.org, and then once you're on here, I got to get this out of the way. Search for FAFSA. And this is Matt Carpenter, who I did a lot of presentations with. He made this video a while ago when this came out, so I will post this in the chat. If you go in there, we've got over 60,000 signatures now, and we're really trying to, let me get into the chat here, and then I've got 6 questions, so I got to get moving here. There's the link. Go in there and sign it, and we're really trying to get some eyes on this to potentially not that part of it to not go into play. And you mentioned child support as well. Child support is considered income to who's ever receiving it. So they will ask, have you received any child support? So that can move the needle quite a bit on an EFC if there's child support of $40,000 a year or something. That's going to change as well. So with the 24-25 school year, child support is going to be considered an asset of whoever receives it, which is better because it's only assessed at 5.64 instead of the higher income ones that I shared. So anyways, okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please post there and not in the chat, because I'm going to close the chat here. Okay, the question was whether you have overall, okay, yeah, so I answered that one live. Okay. It used to not matter for divorced parents which parent claimed child for head of household designation relative to parents submitting the FAFSA. Will that be changing soon? Is their website? Now, it doesn't matter who's claiming who for the next couple of years. So I know a lot of divorced couples, they switch off about who gets to claim. It's really based on where your child spends the most time for the next 2 years. So if your child spent the most time with you, Michelle, but you're not claiming that child, that's okay. You can still move forward with that. That's not a problem. if our income is going to be high the first year, so not much financial aid, but likely to be low in a subsequent years, will schools adjust your financial aid accordingly? Or is it kind of based on the admission year? It's not that you will submit the FAFSA and potentially the CSS profile, depending on the school, every year, but definitely the FAFSA. So if your income changes dramatically, then they'll see that on subsequent FAFSAs. But I would also counsel you that, say you have a junior, when you're filling it out this fall, you're going to be answering questions about 2021 for your income. And if 2021 was, a good year, and like you're saying in your question, things are changing. So by 2022, 2023, this year, it's not as good. That's something you can appeal on. So fill out the form correctly. I wouldn't wait until that year to have your EFC drop and maybe get more money. You should appeal. So if 2021 is much better than 2022, you're probably going to be appealing saying, hey, my current reality is different, which it would be 2023 when you're doing this if you have a junior. But a lot of schools will say, well, get us your most recent tax return and let us see the difference, right? Or tax transcript. You should request a tax transcript after you submit forms. And you can just do that by just Google how to request a tax transcript, and make sure you're on an IRS site and not some dummy site that's trying to grab your Social Security number. For seniors, I would just do that now. It's free. Get it, throw it in your college file so that if you get verified or anything comes up, you can produce that tax transcript. And it's an official synopsis of your tax return so that the schools can see it. So that's what I would say, Elizabeth, that you're going to probably want to appeal. But your original question, it's best in an ideal world to look as poor as possible in your base year, what I call your base year, which is the first year that you're applying for admission. But if things change dramatically, most schools, especially if it's a school that meets a high percentage of need, usually they'll meet that need. But if you have any worry about that, call the school that your kid's going to or thinking of going to and pose that question to financial aid. And you'll get a good gut feel based on how they're answering, if they're kind of being loosey-goosey or evasive and don't want to answer. Because there are a few schools out there that I've seen where the second year it's not as generous, but they also run the risk of you saying, hey, what's going on, and leaving, right? And they don't want that. So you do have a little power there. So hopefully that helps. That is similar to my impressions from what I've been reading, but it's nice to hear your expert reflections. Oh, thank you, Naomi. We split time 50-50. So again, Michelle, my answer to the question earlier totally fits. So basically, if you're 50-50, you can take advantage of which parent is the most advantageous custodial parent. And you can change it, by the way. Like if for this coming, the FAFSA on October 1, the year look back, if it's you, and that's what makes the most sense, but then the next year you retire and it's better for your ex to do it, the custodial parent for the next 2 years doesn't have to be the same. So whatever you do for freshman year, you're not locked into it. You're following the definition of custodial parent. It's been a great, basically, loophole and planning opportunity, but it is going away for the 24-25 school year. So like I said earlier, it'll be the parent that provides the most financial support, which will be interesting to see how they define that, because I think there's a lot of ambiguity there, right? That, well, I pay for this, but I pay for this. And, how do you keep track of every penny of food? It's probably going to leave a little wiggle room for people. It would have been easier if they just said adjusted gross income, because that's on a tax return, but that's what they say as the fallback if it's even. So, all right, so that's that. And Michelle, because what we filed this year could impact FAFSA in 2 years. Yeah, so 2022, this coming FAFSA will be all about 2021. And then the next year will be all about 2022. The easiest way to think about it is if you're submitting a FAFSA, think about what school year that's for. So if you're submitting a FAFSA for the 23-24 school year, subtract 2 from 2023, and that's the tax year you're going to be reporting on. So if you have a senior, basically you reported on 2020 on the FAFSA, and so it'll be 20, 21, 22, 23. Those will be your 4 tax years. And you can back into it with whatever age your child is. Okay, got that. Okay. Appeal right now or after admission. Well, yeah, you can't appeal until they've been admitted, right? Because I don't think the financial aid office will take the time until the student's been admitted. They're not gonna entertain an appeal because you might not be accepted. So you want to wait until after admission to do the appeal. My son is currently a sophomore, so this year will be our base year for FAFSA. Should we close our son's savings account, which is about $8K in it this year, and move that money to our account? So Lisa, that's a bit of a loaded question. First of all, assets are different than income. So I know this can be confusing. Income is a 2-year look back. Assets are assessed literally the day you hit submit. So you have plenty of time. You're not going to be, if you have a sophomore, you're not going to be submitting your first FAFSA until fall 2023. So you're right that you are in the base year. So don't create capital gains that you don't need to create. Don't pull money out of a 401k and then put it back or whatever. Don't do things that you're going to have to explain to the college why that wasn't real income. I would say that because you're in the base year. But as far as your son's account, there's no rush to move that out of his name. The reason why you read that that's something you should consider doing is because kids' assets, student assets, instead of being assessed up to 5.64%, as I said, they're assessed either at 20% by a FAFSA school, FAFSA only school, or if a school requires the CSS profile, they can assess it up to 25%. And I've even had a couple of them when I'm talking to them say they can even look at it more, which is a little crazy, but much higher percentage for kids. So 8,000 for a CSS profile school, 25% is 2,000, right? So that would add 2,000 to the EFC. So depending on your situation, if you have need-based aid eligibility, then it might make sense to say, hey, we should put that money in our name, and just our child trusts us. We know it's his or her money, and it'll be used for whatever, but we'll move it into our name. But you don't have to rush and do that now. There's plenty of time, and you can see what kind of EFCs you have, and if it's something that even makes sense to do. What if the parents are just separated but not officially divorced? Will the custodial definition be the same? Yes. In financial aid, if you're divorced or separated, and you want to be separated, means you're out of the house, right? If you're in the house, like I've had people through the years that are married, not really madly in love anymore, but either didn't divorce for different reasons. And if they're in the same house, technically they're still married. So if you're separated and you're in different dwellings, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about a divorce. Doesn't have to be final. Okay. Thanks. We just have a crazy situation with our base year, daughter a junior, but our industry also means we're all over the place. Yeah. And I get it, Elizabeth. Some people that are in sales, they can have a year where they just blew it out of the water income wise, and then another year where it's really low. And just remember, if the year that a college is looking at is not, your income is not as good, that's definitely a reason to reach out and let the financial aid office know. That's all about financial aid, because that's around need-based aid. If it's merit and you're wanting to appeal merit aid, which is the non-need-based aid, then you're reaching out to Office of Admissions. So yeah, you definitely want to keep that in mind. And And like I said earlier, that's something that, myself and our experts, we just finished a season of that, and we're still having parents come back to us and fill us in on the results. And we've had some really nice success stories for families, which is just amazing. Just it's a wonderful feeling to help people in that way. So, okay, so that's all the questions. And I see there's something about, there's a number in chat. So I think oh, you're welcome. People are just saying thank you. That's great. Any other questions? Got about 10 minutes, but we can sign off early if everybody's good. Very good questions. Nice job, everybody. Those are all really good questions. And I will share one thing with seniors, and I'm assuming this is still going on, because now you're going to get into getting ready to bring them to school in August or September, depending on the move-in date. But Bed Bath and Beyond, which not all of them are closed here, but some of ours have closed, which is a bummer. But they have coupons, right? And depending on your region of the country, here, they don't really care if the coupon is expired, but they have a lot of coupons. Get $20 off, get $5 off if you spend 15, these kind of coupons. And once in a while, they put out coupons 20% off of a whole purchase. Those are the mother load great ones. And when my kids went to college, basically you would go to Bed Bath and Beyond, and I'm talking about getting their dorm room ready. And you would go through, because you're going to get a list from the colleges saying they need to have this and this and this. And then kids are going to want stuff, and girls will want like curtains and stuff like that. Whereas my son could have cared less about that, right? So some of the girls, I know that's a stereotype. Maybe there's some guys that want curtains too. I don't know, but you know what I mean? So basically you can go to Bed Bath and Beyond, and it's like a registry almost. Like you can look for the stuff, and they gave us like a zapper gun, and you just went and zapped it. Like I forget if we set up an account. And then for each one of my kids, they had separate accounts, and we just went through, we need this, we need this, we need this. And then when we got to the college, they have it already. Like it's genius what they did. I mean, I had a kid went to JMU in Virginia, and one went to IU in Bloomington, Indiana. And we just showed up to the closest Bed Bath and Beyond. They rolled out a cart and said, here's all your stuff that you purchased and said you wanted to purchase in Washington. I hadn't paid for it yet. And at that point, you could go through and say, oh, we don't need that lamp, and take stuff out. And then you buy everything. If you have those coupons, I mean, I saved about $90 per kid with that coupon. So it's a really nice savings. And then you're all ready, because there's a lot of stuff to move into a dorm room. Then you're all ready, and you have everything you need and that you already pre-purchased, and go to the dorm, do all your things. If you get there and you realize, oh, we don't need those bed risers, like that's a typical thing that raises the bed so you can slide the plastic big Tupperware buckets that might be some of their clothes in there under there. That's a typical dorm thing. If you find and you move in, oh, the roommate had that, we don't need it, you just take it back and get your money back. So it's a wonderful thing. So definitely check that out. And you can think of me if you find one of those coupons. It's the mother load. It's amazing. So I'm a big coupon girl. So I hate buying retail and always shop coupons. So thanks for the B&B dorm pack info. We just got a mailing from the college about dorm pack deals from a company called OCM. Do colleges get some sort of money back from promoting those deals? They might. I don't know. I don't remember, because it was 2012 when I moved my kids in. So I know with linens and stuff, there's a certain, I think at least dorm beds used to be extra. I know we're getting into not financial stuff, but hopefully it's helpful to everybody. Extra long twin beds was pretty common in the dorm rooms then. And that's not a kind of sheet that most of us have in our house, that size for fitted sheets, right? I guess it's for, my nephew's like 6'4", right? So, they have to have a little bit longer bed. So maybe that's what they do. They could be getting a kickback from those companies, like a revenue share. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I know with linens and stuff, I don't I don't know if I got those from Bed Bath and Beyond. I can't remember where I got that stuff from, but yeah, you will, or your child will be getting information about that kind of stuff too. So it's just a different part of the process. It just keeps, it's just one step after another. So definitely get your rest before you drop your kids at school, because it's emotional, but it's also, it's work. You're setting up a dorm room. So it's exciting. Yes, the longer beds are still an important aspect of getting the sheets. Yeah, I figured that didn't change. That's probably pretty standard. So, yep, it's kind of funny to be talking about that. I feel like it was yesterday with my two, and it's been almost 10 years since about 10 years ago was when my kids made their decision. So I will say that it goes by really fast, the 4 years once they're in school. I always tell them it flies by. This is a great chapter. Enjoy it. Work hard and join clubs and really figure out what you want to do, how you want to change the world. That's what I used to tell my kids, figure it out. So anyways, all right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I don't see any more in the Q&A. So hopefully this was helpful. As usual, I kind of went off on a few of my little tangents, but I think I've been through this with my kids, and then I've got the knowledge. So I think it's helpful. Every little bit that I can share with you guys so that what's coming, I think is helpful. And for your younger parents, it's coming down the pike. So that's always a good thing, right? So, all right, everybody. I don't see any other questions. I will give you that 6 minutes back for your evening. And what's today? Okay, 2 weeks from now, we will be at a conference. So I will check if we are canceling Q&A. I'll let you know. Matt Carpenter and I and Kevin Degnan, another one of my colleagues at College A Pro, we're going to be at the IECA, which is the Independent Education Counselors Association conference. So depending on what we have going on, we might still do Q&A office hours, or we might get one of our colleagues. But if we do cancel it, you'll get an email and you'll know. But at this point, it's not on the docket. I'll send a message out and I'll see what we're doing. So if I don't see you next time, then I will see you the time after that, and we'll keep you posted if somebody else is going to be covering. So, all right, guys, have a great evening, and everybody stay well. Take care.